1 week season.
OWS fam, the nation, my dudes and dudettes, as you can see right there. What is going on, man? It has been way too long. I am Hilow. Those who have been around know me. We are going to bring a very special guest in here very shortly. You know him by Mr. Mike Johnson, M. Johnson 86, another top contributor at 1 week season. What we do here every Friday during best ball season is we bring you what we call the Industry Experts podcast or series or video, whatever the hell you want to call it. What we do here is we are going to continue to push the envelope in theoretical conversations with the top industry experts around the industry, talking best ball. If you are new to us, you're just scrolling across us, head on over to oneweekseason.com, get signed up for the Best Ball Plus package, because we are bringing you 5 training sessions a week, Monday through Friday. Every single day, you're going to get a training session in your podcast feed and be able to get the cutting edge stuff that 1 week season brings. But without further ado, we'll bring him in. Mr. Mike Johnson, how are we doing today, my dude? I guess tonight we're recording this Thursday evening for tomorrow, but how we doing, man?
Hey, I'm terrific. It's like when the NFL season ends, I feel like I just hit like that wall and I'm like ready to be like to walk away from it and just like take a break. But then free agency starts, you start getting the itch, and then the draft stuff starts ramping up a little bit. I did some pre-draft best ball, and then I'm excited to get back, the contest dropping, doing a couple drafts, doing our team previews. I'm revved up. I'm ready to rock.
Oh, hyped up on Mountain Dew, man. I'm going to come at you like a spider monkey. You mentioned all the different contests that dropped. Let's talk about those. And I know for those that are not Best Ball Plus members, I tackle underdog stuff. I tackle game theory stuff. You tackle DraftKings and drafters. So let us know what's going on over there at DraftKings and drafters before I shout out some underdog stuff.
Yeah, so DraftKings just launched yesterday, actually. They brought out their, I think strategically, they wait to see what underdog does and then just try to match or do something similar. They have their main flagship contest, their Millionaire Maker, $20 entry, $15 million prize pool, $1.5 million to first, very similarly structured to Best Ball Mania. And then they've got a couple higher price point contests, and then they had a $3 20 max tournament and a $8 tournament drop as well. And then drafters, they have launched their main flagship tournament. It grew by 25% this year. It's a $2.5 million prize pool this year, $500K to first. So bumping that up a bit. And they dropped the price point. So instead of $20 an entry this year, it's $15, a little bit easier for some people to get to. And then they usually do a second big tournament at a lower price point that my sources tell me will be coming in the next week. So a lot going on, a lot to choose from.
Your sources, man, Mr. Increíble. So I was trying to pull up DraftKings. I couldn't get over there in time, but taking a look at, here's the big drafters tournament that you were alluding to. So that price point, a little bit nicer than on Underdog at $25. Their flagship tournament, obviously being the BBM. And then over at DraftKings, what'd you say their flagship was? $20 over there?
Yeah, $20 over there. Yep. And then I think DraftKings has they have a deal where during May, for every 5 entries you do in their $20 tournament, you get a free ticket. So you can do that up to 5 times. So what is that? I'm not good at 25 entries, you could get 5 free ones. So, that's $300 if you're going to max it or whatever anyways. So.
Yeah, and then DraftKings was running. Did you mention that? Sorry, I tuned out. I'm just kidding. DraftKings just dropped a promo as well, didn't they? For May drafts.
That's what I just.
That's what you're talking about. Okay, cool.
And then Drafters has their milestone bonuses. That's for the whole thing. So that's if you do 10 drafts, you get one bonus ticket. 25, you get another bonus ticket. Once you hit 50, you get 2 more. Once you hit 100, you get 3 more. So that's 7 total bonus tickets. And then if you fully max, it's 150 drafts. They also throw you $100 bonus and a T-shirt. And who doesn't love a T-shirt?
Let's go, dude. Yeah, like you see up here somewhere the cactus that you get from Underdog for maxing BBMs. I'm sure the one from last year is in the mail. No, but we talk a lot these like theoretical buzzwords. You see EV thrown around a lot. You see expected value. But when we're talking about like what that means, boiling it down, it is what you can expect to extract from each entry that you enter into a contest. You talk about all these contests that are available around the industry now. Last year, I think I drafted about 1,200 teams, just under that. So yeah. We how many are you through so far this year?
I've done like 5.
Yeah, and we say so far this year, that's a grand total of about 48 hours at this point. By the time we're recording this, yeah, I'm through about 30 across all platforms. The one platform I haven't drafted on yet is DraftKings. I need to get on over there and start drafting there as well. But yeah, expected value across a portfolio that vast, that diverse, and not everyone I understand is going to be drafting 1,200 teams. But if you think about the more money, the more contests you're pumping into this thing, your portfolio, we need to start being a little bit more concerned with this term expected value. And like I said, it's what you can expect to extract from each entry. And we know that these contests, these big marquee contests, are set up in ways such that the expected value of each entry is lower than the entry. So we know that we're fighting against rake. We know that these contests are hard to advance out of your round to begin with. And now you got to meet certain advancement thresholds, because all of them except drafters, major difference there, are playoff style contests where you're thrown into pods and you have to beat so many teams, advance out of that, and so on and so forth, week 15, 16 into the finals in week 17. Drafters is very unique and nice in the sense that it is a cumulative scoring format. So that is very different when we're talking about developing a game plan through these theoretical concepts that we're going to be talking about all year to combat that. So kind of get a lot of different elements from each things. But coming back to that like buzz term expected value, we know in these contests, in these playoff style contests, so it's different again on drafters where we're trying to go cumulative scoring, but on Underdog, on DraftKings, we know going in based on the rules in that contest, because we have things like how many teams are advancing from each pod, each draft, so on and so forth. We know we can calculate expected value, and we know the 2 highest contributors to expected value in playoff type format are week 17 is number 1, and number 2 is advancement rate, and that is getting as many teams as you can out of your draft. So knowing that, how are you kind of differentiating your kind of game plan development when we're talking about drafters versus Underdog and DraftKings, knowing that expected value, those are the 2 most important things to us?
Yeah. So, and I talked about this on my training session this week, just like kind of why I pump up drafters and why I think like it's the place to attack, and kind of how I frame it is, depending on, like you said, not everybody's going to do 1,200 drafts. So everybody has different ranges of what they're going to do. And like, just for me, like when I run the numbers and look at it from an expected value standpoint, drafters, like I'm going to account for my bankroll every dollar that I can onto drafters first.
Yeah.
And then if I still have more bankroll to go, then I'm going to play on the other sites as well.
So why is that?
Well, because, so 2 things. You talked about the pod stuff. So the luck there, like there's such an issue of luck, and there's so much that's like outside of your control as far as like what pod you've been. I mean, you've done it enough. Like week 15 last year, like I had on DraftKings like teams that had like 190 that didn't advance to week 16. And then I had like a couple teams with like 160 or that it did advance, or like one team, it was like bad, but like the team that won it scored like 145 and they advanced. Like that's just like straight up, like that's so far beyond like anything you can plan for or whatever. So like just having your fortunes, things like that, so far out of your control.
Yeah.
And then you look at from drafters, like right now, to your question, I think right now, like drafters is the spot where if you're going to be drafting during this early window, I think that drafters would be the optimal spot to be making those drafts because, to your point, we go to the pods in week 15. So you draft with your team, and then after week 14, it resets. You go into a pod, everybody's at 0. So like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't do you any, it doesn't, I mean, yes, you have a bit of an advantage if you have this like super team that's made it, but you have to survive like 3 or 4 months of like dudes don't get hurt on your team versus somebody who drafts in August, early September. And yeah, you can like there's ADP values you can benefit from, but like on drafters, if you draft that super team, like you don't just like, oh, week 15 you only put up 140, like deuces, like you're done. So like just from the expected value of like if you do draft that super team, knowing like you're gonna get rewarded for it. So like if you are drafting during that early window, like I think that in my opinion, that's like the optimal place to be doing it because you can you're not just gonna have the rug pulled potentially.
A lot of good stuff there, man. And we're gonna talk about some of that stuff, and we're gonna hit on some more stuff. And we're gonna give an example of a draft that I did on Underdog in the BBM earlier today, actually, that I wanted to kind of talk about. And we're gonna get some of these theoretical concepts, these more ideas of kind of what we're gonna talk about over the next 15, 20 minutes or so. We're gonna take a unique sneak peek behind the curtain into what that looks like on a roster. That will be coming here shortly. The next kind of big thing that we are, and early on, we just launched the Best Ball Plus product this week. Early on, we're kind of in how we've designed this package, this course to be, is we modeled it around like how much effect or how can we affect or have the greatest effect on a person's best ball strategy. And the way that we kind of built this is we built it to mirror like one-on-one training sessions. So that's why we bring you 5 training sessions a week. They're all going to be 30 minutes to an hour long. And we're going to start it with this week. You probably, if you're familiar with kind of how we do things at 1 week season, we want to take this building block approach. So that's why we're talking about the basics here. Another basic concept that goes vastly overlooked or misunderstood is something that you were alluding to in that pods discussion in the advancement windows of these playoff style contests. You called it pod luck or just luck, I think. That all goes into the things that we can't control is the other kind of buzzword that you use to describe it, into this idea of variance. Variance, just put as simply as we can, is all the stuff that we cannot control. We have control over how we construct rosters. We have control over the players that we select. We have control over the rankings that we're drafting off of. All these things we have control over. We have control over when we draft. What we don't have, and when we draft, I guess on a quick sidebar, when we draft is important because we have this kind of like sliding scale of information, and information in this game is paramount. So I've seen a lot of talk around the Twitter sphere or the X sphere. That sounds weird, dude. About like people drafting right now in these playoff style contests are paying the rake. I vehemently disagree. People that draft right now that are not embracing additional variance are paying the rake. So that is a very nuanced distinction for us. But having an understanding of variance, how it affects, how do we manipulate it based on when we're drafting, the amount of information we have, the amount of variables that are at play when we're drafting is paramount. So those things that we can't control, how do you manipulate those things? How do you go into a draft now and make it different than drafting in late August and early September?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally accurate. And, to clarify my previous thing, I'm not saying like nobody should ever be doing
Oh, no, no,
any
no,
job
no,
right now.
not at all. I'm
But yeah,
totally with
you're
you.
absolutely right. Is
Deviant
like
drafters.
if you're going to draft now, like, swing for the fences, right? Like you want that you're not just going along with ADP. I actually in our Discord, in our Best Ball Plus Discord, was talking with one of our subs today, and they were talking about my rankings. I just finished my DraftKings rankings and posted them today, and he was like, "Yeah, I love how you're not just like in alignment all over the place. There's clearly some big values within your rankings versus the ADP." And this guy, he's subscribed to another site, and he's got a couple other like free sites that he looks at, and he's like, they're all just so close to ADP that like,
Yeah.
you're kind of just going along with like the chalk from a DFS perspective. So I think being willing to take those stands is the biggest thing. Being willing to go in on those, whether it's a player that you're really high on and their ADP changes, whether it's a team that like all of a sudden, we get to August sometimes and it's like, wow, like this team, like this guy's healthy and the quarterback looks good and like the offense is clicking, like they're scoring a touchdown every preseason drive with the starters. Like if you can get ahead of those things, like there's so much that you can lean into. And it's just a matter of, like you said, not just like paying the rake or just like, yeah, I'll just go along with like what today looks like. It's trying to draft in a time machine.
And I would argue that that edge is going to be more pronounced this season as compared to seasons past. Why? Because we have the recency bias factor of last season, the team that shipped BBM4 that everyone is looking at to develop their strategies for this season had the chalk first and second round pairing of Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb. Why do I say this chalk? Those players, their ADPs aligned at the back half of the first round and the front half of the second round the entirety of the draft cycle last season. Their ADPs stayed in alignment to where it was very easy to pair. And then the schedule is released. And then, oh, by the way, they now play each other in week 17. So everybody and their mother has Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb teams. So we might have this like recency bias factor also built in coming into this season that like, hey, just stay to ADP and it works out the best for us. That's a very nuanced discussion. We're not going to get into the rest of that discussion. That's going to be reserved for the Best Ball Plus members. Obviously, if you're watching this, you're not a Best Ball Plus sub, head on over to oneweekseason.com, hit the Best Ball Plus tab, get signed up for Best Ball Plus. You'll get my rankings for Underdog. You'll get Mike's rankings for drafters for DraftKings. You'll get a free course on how to become a better best ball player that I wrote last year. You will also get 5 training sessions a week straight to your podcast feed of choice. So this is good stuff, man. Leading us into kind of the next big, we have to have an understanding of this. We'll just term it optimal, or we'll term it standard accepted optimal practices by the industry. So we have things like on Underdog, on Draft. Well, we'll say Underdog because it's an 18-round draft. Drafters and DraftKings are 20 rounds. We have these things like standard or optimal roster construction. So you've seen it over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Michael Leone over at Establish the Run did a lot of good work last offseason about what is the optimal roster construction. It's spoiler alert, 3-5-8-2 or 2-5-8-3. Beyond that, so we have these ideas of standard industry-wide accepted optimal practices. Moving beyond those or deviating from those, we call those deviations from a theoretical sense, we're now into the realm of exploits or exploitations. So the poker players that are watching this, you're probably familiar, exploitative player versus GTO. It's a very, very similar discussion to be had in best ball, in that we can take the standard commonly accepted best practices / optimal theory. We can take observations of the field. We can generate these assumptions from those. Picture yourself sitting at a poker table for the poker players. And now we introduce these exploits. So how do we take an overall, the average player, and how do we exploit that? How do we exploit against that to generate additions or boosts to our expected value? That is a very interesting term and idea that's going to lead us into kind of what I want to talk about with this roster. Allow me to get it pulled up here. That's not it. Here we go. All right. So we'll take a quick moment and look at this roster by saying I did not take a running back until the 6th round. I'm over here out of the 11 spot. So I started 4 wide receivers and that quarterback before I took my first running back. Rattled off 3 in a row there. And then I'm straight back to pounding this wide receiver position, took some tight ends, quarterback to pair with my first round selection, and then finally another running back. And you see this, it is the quote unquote 0 RB. And there's a very nuanced discussion to be had about this term 0 RB, because over the last 2 seasons, it has been the buzz. We saw again for the second year in a row, a 0 RB team ship the major tournament on Underdog, the BBM. But I want to fold into this new meta, we'll call it, of this season, where it's like, what does 0 RB even mean anymore? Because 2 years ago, or we'll just use last year. Last year, the last RB2, so the RB24, was coming off the board somewhere in the 5th round. This year, the RB24 per ADP on Underdog right now is coming off the board in the 8th round. So what does that mean to us as we're building a quote-unquote 0 RB team? Do we have to out 0 RB everybody, or at what point do we take a stand? It's a very, very interesting theoretical discussion, and I want to talk about some of the concepts we've talked about here. Variance, we talked about exploitations, and let's just get into it. So I start the draft, Puka, Devontae Adams out of the 111. You'll notice Devontae Adams is a quote-unquote reach per ADP. That's not important to us on May 2nd. Brought it back with Jalen Waddle and Cooper Kupp. So again, now I have both the top pass catchers on the Rams. So we know later I'm going to be targeting Mr. Matthew Stafford here. Still not most important to us. I then, in the 5th round, draft Anthony Richardson before taking my first running back, Joe Mixon, who should be a 3rd round pick per my rankings. That's notwithstanding. We'll continue. Then I come Jonathan Brooks again, quote unquote reach per ADP. I took him at 83rd overall. He's currently going 102 overall. And Zach Moss at the next turn. Again, an ADP around 102, taking him at pick 86. So my first 8 rounds, and this is kind of the meat and potatoes of our roster on Underdog, these first 7-8 rounds, I started 4 wide receivers, a quarterback, and then rattled off 3 running backs. So this idea of 0 running back, is this a 0 running back team? Or what are you seeing that I took as an exploit here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things there. One, I love that you, in the first 4 rounds, you took Puka and Cooper Kupp. You got that Rams wide receiver pairing. Mm-hmm. And like you said, especially on Underdog, where you have the playoff format where you're going to want to stack those guys probably. That's a lot of draft capital, so you're probably going to get Stafford. I love that you still you got the high upside rushing quarterback, Anthony Richardson, there in the fifth. I like that. Some people might think, okay, I'm locked into Stafford. Okay, I've got to bet on him having a big year. I like the idea that you didn't like force. You didn't think, oh, I'm waiting on quarterback, which they have the highest. They're those top end guys, the dual threat guys, they can separate on a given week. So I like that you were willing to take Richardson there, who we're real high on this week. We were talking in Discord with the subs today.
Yeah.
So you still were willing to pull the trigger there, and instead of just being like tunnel vision on like, okay, Stafford's going to be my quarterback, I'll just take another late guy with him. And that you kind of let it play out from there. And I think that to your question about the zero running back thing, I think that sometimes people, they don't see the forest through the trees, that sort of thing. Like it's more about the specific players and, which specific players can you get and where can you get them and where are you drafting? That's where like we talked a lot about last year, and we will this year again, dynamic drafting, being able to flow with the room and see where things are going. So like for you, like being able to get, you have Mixon who, based on your rankings and his archetype, what he's been, he goes to that Houston offense. Like he's the perfect guy who like, he kind of sustains, he puts up some big games once in a while. But he fits perfectly on that roster. And then you've got Brooks, who's like that high upside rookie, who probably going to get stronger as the season goes on. I think just the types of backs that you put on that team are what kind of fit it together really well. That's the thing I noticed first when you sent me this roster earlier.
So continuing that discussion, there is the common accepted idea of a zero running back roster is we're waiting at the position and then we must take at least 6 running backs. So you'll notice on this roster, and why do we do that? Well, we want to leverage variance. We want to, because running back, obviously, we know is the most oft injured position. We know that its fantasy value is most closely tied to volume. So we want more shots on goal on a zero RB roster. But tying that idea of variance and knowing that variance is at its peak right now in this early portion of this draft window, with that same discussion that you had earlier about we have to fade injuries for the next 3 or 4 months. Well, what's the flip side of that? What happens if we don't know what the backfield split is going to be in Carolina? Well, what if Jonathan Brooks just comes in, the RB1 from this draft class, and takes over that backfield? Well, would we want to have him on 6 running back builds at this point? No, because if we get that news, he's jumping up into the 3rd round. Similar discussion for Tyler Algier. Why did I take him on this roster? And why did I stop at 4 running backs? It's leveraging variance. Everybody, okay, we don't want to speak in absolutes with everybody, but the general population, based on our observations last year, 2 years ago, this year, are not embracing enough variance in this early draft window. On a zero running back build like this, the common practice right now is to draft 6 running backs. What happens if Bijan Robinson blows an Achilles after 2 snaps and pulls an Aaron Rodgers this season? What happens if Bijan Robinson gets hurt in July and tears an ACL on the practice field? We saw it happen 2 or 3 times last season. Where is Tyler Algier going to end up? Bijan is a 1st-round pick. He's probably going to end up in the late 2nd, early 3rd round. Where would he be most beneficial? If he's in a workhorse role to us, if we are able to make the other positions on the roster elite. So that was kind of the premise of why I stopped at 4 running backs here. I'm not saying like, oh, I just think that like Joe Mixon and Jonathan Brooks and Zach Moss and Bijan is going to get hurt. Like, I'm not trying to predict what's going to happen. I'm just placing this roster in the best potential spot to leverage that additional variance that we have right now. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, and I think that's very well laid out. And like just looking at those guys, like obviously Algier he's gonna need an injury probably. He still is gonna have some contingent value, and he'll have
Yeah.
like the random week where like the Bijan, like the regular owners or the DFS owners will be pissed off because he like flips in 2 touchdowns and contributes even if Robinson never gets hurt. But
Yeah.
like the guys who really stand out to me are Brooks and Moss, because those are the guys who, if August comes around and like Brooks is coming off a torn ACL, he would have been, if he didn't tear his ACL last year, he would have been a end of the first round guy probably. So like if he comes in August and like he just looks like pretty healthy and he's going to be good to go, like to your point, he's going to be like a 4th, 5th round guy. That's where those like high end rookies end up, those rookie running backs. Same with Zach Moss. Right now, he's going in the 8th round, and Chase Brown, I didn't see on this one, but
He's in the
going in
9th.
like the 10th round.
Yeah.
That's because there's like that uncertainty there. Well, like Moss was like a boss. I didn't mean to rhyme there, but in like for Indianapolis last year when Taylor was out, well, he's stepping into that. If he just takes over the Joe Mixon role and he's like the lead guy for the Bengals offense, that we'll talk another week about everybody sleeping on them. But where's he going to go if it comes out and like he looks like he's going to get that 70-80% workload that Mixon had? Like he's going to be like, you won't be, to our earlier discussion, you wouldn't be able to create this team in August. And both of those guys, I don't really see there being that much opportunity for their draft, for where they're being drafted to be worse in August. So I love the way, again, it's the guys that you fit into those spots. It's not just like randomly, take receivers here and then take running backs here. It's who are those receivers? Who are those running backs?
100%. And we know Zach Taylor, head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, Gary Kubiak, disciple. We know that he has proven that he wants to utilize a lead back. We know that offense is still a Zach Taylor offense. It's still run by Joe Burrow. We have all these indicators. And also, by the way, his only current competition in the backfield for touches are all 5th round or later drafted players over the last 3 seasons. So there's not a lot of competition. Again, he's just, that archetype, that profile is kind of what I'm looking to target here. And I thought it fit very well in this quote unquote zero RB build. Let's quickly talk about the tight end room here. Dalton Schultz was actually a faller. So this is beyond ADP. And that's kind of, he just made sense for this roster. I get it, like that he has some added target competition. But again, another Gary Kubiak disciple. And if I saw an interesting, I think it was from Ryan Heath over at Fantasy Points, article that he posted today that was like 1/3 of all the top 24 wide receiver scores came from 5 coaches. Guess who those were? Mike McDaniel. It was Kyle Shanahan. It was Sean McVay. It was Bobby Slow. These are all Gary Kubiak disciples. Zach Taylor is also one. I wrote up something yesterday, 2 days ago, or maybe it was in one of the training sessions.
All flowing together, isn't it?
Like Zach Taylor. Yeah, exactly. Zach Taylor, although he is a Gary Kubiak disciple, he is the one outlier who is not like stealing things from his brethren, his cousins, we'll say. He's the one, like even Bobby Slowick, like 2/3 of the way through the season last season was like plucking stuff from Mike McDaniel. Kyle Shanahan talked about how he did that, and we talked about that on or Zandamir and I talked about that on the DFS, the Slate podcast last year in depth too, where it was like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, they're all stealing stuff from Mike McDaniel. And he's taking this league is being taken by storm from Mike McDaniel. That's a story for a different day. Anyway, I get it with Dalton Schultz. He was a faller, but backing that up now, taking Jonnu Smith and Mike Gesicki, 2 tight ends who have a lot of uncertainty right now. And I say uncertainty because Mike Gesicki is coming from Miami, where they didn't utilize him heavily, and going to Cincinnati, where now they have this hole at tight end. We have Jonnu Smith, and this is very interesting. Jonnu Smith had a 60-yard touchdown catch and run. He caught it behind the line of scrimmage last year, where he logged the second fastest ball carrier speed of any tight end since they started tracking that metric, which was, I believe, in 2001. Second fastest ball carrier speed. Do we not think that Mike McDaniel is going to have some stuff going on with that? Probably. Anyway, but these are two, I guess, three potential upside tight ends. I knew waiting until Dalton Schultz as the first tight end drafted that I wanted to take three. I knew that I could do that because of the quarterbacks I took, and all this kind of coming together in an 18-round draft where we got to make some of these sacrifices. And typically in zero running back builds, the sacrifice is at running back so that we can bolster the other positions on the roster. We want quarterback to be elite. We want wide receiver to be elite. We want tight end to be elite so that we can leverage the additional variance at running back, as we've discussed up to here. So some big exploits that I utilized on this roster: embracing additional variance, that zero RB build, embracing additional variance at the running back position, stopping at 4, but selecting archetype running backs that could move up into the 3rd, 4th round, taking additional wide receivers and taking upside wide receivers. So I am high on Khalil Shakir. We have all these reports that are coming out that Keon Coleman was drafted to be the X-type wide receiver. That was Stephon Diggs. We'll see. To me, this man is more of a Gabe Davis than he was a Stephon Diggs. The fit from Keon Coleman in Buffalo made very little sense to me on draft day, and it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it's like, do we expect Curtis Samuel to be like? That doesn't make sense to me either. Curtis Samuel has extreme overlap with tight end Dalton Kincaid. They both have low ADOT. They both run heavy percentage of the routes out of the slot. So it's like, where is the guy that is going to be that like possessions type wide receiver with the upside? I'm just throwing a bet here that it's going to be Khalil Shakir. 3rd-year wide receiver, has proven that he can break out with the snaps as he did last year. I mean, he had 300-yard games last year. That's noteworthy, right? Cortland Sutton is the alpha, we'll call it the wide receiver 1A. I don't know what you want to call it on his team, but what sticks out to me from Cortland Sutton, his underlying metrics against various coverage shells last season were borderline elite. I mean, he was almost top 24 across the board, which is a good thing. And then bringing it in with Malik Washington, again, a speedy wide receiver that was drafted, handpicked by Mike McDaniel. Reports from draft day 3 were that he was screaming all day 2 to try and draft this man. And then they finally pulled the trigger on him, and he was elated. If you want to go look at his call when he got drafted, go check that on Twitter. And then Greg Dortch, potential for some PPR upside. Well, this is half PPR, so I'll save that. And then A.T. Perry. A.T. Perry, we kind of just glance over the fact that he had a 2-touchdown game last year. We kind of just glance over the fact that Michael Thomas is no longer in New Orleans. We kind of just glance over the fact that like this guy is probably going to see 80% of the weekly snaps over there in New Orleans. So high upside youngsters to round out, and I wanted to bolster the wide receiver position instead of taking an additional shot on a Dylan Lobb or a Tyrone Tracy. Some of these guys who have lower chances of being like that workhorse type back. Quick wrap up thoughts on this discussion, my dude.
Biggest thing to me is I really like the tight end group. I like how you put it together. Specifically, and again, don't want to give too much away, but I love how you paired 2 of your tight ends, you paired with your running backs, especially at this point in the year, because, your running backs we talked about, for them to pay off, for this roster to work out for you, you're banking on Houston and Cincinnati having, like, they're going to have good offenses again, and Moss and Mixon are kind of the guys. Well, if they do have really good offenses, especially in this, like you said, it's half PPR on underdogs. So like touchdowns are huge. So like, okay, now you have likely the starting tight end for those teams. If Moss and Mixon are putting it together and they're having a big season, it's because the offense is doing well. If the offense is doing well, these tight ends are going to have a chance to, do those guys, do they alternate 2 touchdown games during the playoff weeks and kind of get you there? So I love how once you built it this way and you were going to have to use 3 tight ends, you were able to kind of tell that story. I do my storyboard articles. What is the story your roster is telling? And that story totally makes sense here. And Jonnu fits in the same way, getting him and Malik Washington paired with Waddle. Like, you've got the Tyreek Hill, obviously, is a big part of what they do and their backfield. But those ancillary pieces, there's McDaniel's, like, he's a freaking wizard. Like, this guy's awesome.
Yeah.
The league is adjusting to him. He's going to adjust to them. And I think that some of those ancillary pieces, bringing in Jonnu and Malik, they're going to be a lot less predictable than they were last year, where it was just Tyreek, Waddle, or the running backs. Like, he's going to get those other positions involved. And I think they purposely address those weaknesses in the offseason. So, yeah, I love how you brought that position group together.
And also there in Miami, again, leveraging the uncertainty, the variance. What happens if Tyreek Hill gets injured during training camp? I have every other piece except the running backs on this roster. So again, another piece of leveraging that variance, leaning into it a little bit heavier than the field is doing right now. So we covered a lot of the kind of just looks around the industry, what's going on in best ball land. We covered some of these pillars of best ball from a theoretical sense. And we kind of gave an example of a roster that I drafted today. Do you have any parting shots before we get out of here, man? We'll keep it below 45 minutes.
No, I mean, I talked about drafters and my EV. I just finished doing our training session for the week. So I think that, everybody can get to that for this week too. The biggest thing, like I said, is I think right now having a game plan, like not just firing blindly, assuming people have like a limited bankroll, that sort of thing. Like, think about what you're trying to get in. When you get in, like, make sure you understand the contest you're in. Make sure you're thinking about, how do I want to attack that? And if you're not sure, subscribe to Best Ball Plus and we'll help you figure it out. I did want to, at the end last year, at the end of this Friday pod we did together, the last thing we did was we each set a guy. I don't remember who yours was, but I remember mine. That, like, we were like, oh, this is a guy, like, flag plant sort of deal, like, that I want, like, I'm targeting in most drafts. Mine was Isaiah Likely. The reason I remember it is he was on my 7th place drafters team and was like smashing the last 4 weeks. So I was like, yes. So I thought we could do that again this year. I don't know.
Let's go.
I'm throwing this at you, but
no, I got mine.
You got yours? All right, you go first.
It's Khalil Shakir, man. I think it's flag plant worthy. And at current valuations, I mean, his ADP, I drafted him before ADP, but his ADP is down here in the 10th, 11th round. Leveraging that uncertainty, we know that, like, Josh Allen makes that offense. Similar discussion to be had with Patrick Mahomes and Rashee Rice last season, where you're getting a young wide receiver. We're leveraging the uncertainty. We know the offense is going to score points because they have Josh Allen, and kind of leveraging that uncertainty. I think the range of outcomes profile of a guy like Khalil Shakir versus his current cost in the 10th, 11th round, I think is just completely lopsided towards the upside.
I dig it. So
who's yours?
I'm going to go with TJ Hawkinson.
Okay, I like that.
I know he's coming off a torn ACL, but like at this point in the draft cycle, so like he was in week 16 or whenever he got hurt, like through 15 or 16 weeks, he was the tight end one. And he's a guy I was high on last year. I had him ranked I had him ranked in like the 30s. I was not taking him in the third because I could wait till the fourth, but he was like basically my highest owned player. And then he did have that tight end one season until he got hurt. And then Laporta passed him the last couple weeks. But the guys it's not taking what it used to take to come back from ACLs. He's going to be 9 months removed. He's got a rookie quarterback, likely either Sam Darnold or rookie quarterback JJ McCarthy. I just think he's going in like the 10th to 12th rounds, depending on the site and what's going on. And it's like, it kind of feels like it's just asymmetric upside, right? Like it's being priced in as like, he's going to suck for a month or miss the first couple weeks. Whereas like, I mean, he could have, if he has anything close to last year's season, just cooking with gas. So he's my guy.
Man, are you just the tight end whisperer? I mean, if you're going to crush 2 tight end picks in a row,
we're going to find out, I guess.
Yeah, putting the industry on blast, man. Let's go. Tight end whisperer over here. All right, man. Thank you for joining us. As always, pleasure talking to you, dude. You are going to get these sneak preview, or I guess sneak peek industry expert podcast every week are going to be live on Twitter, live on YouTube. If you want to get access to the rest of the stuff behind the scenes, get access to our rankings, get access to the course, get access to all of these training sessions. And we are heavy in the theory. If you haven't gotten that at this point, we are heavy into teaching you how to be a better thinker, a better decision maker. And we need to train that because you're only going to have 30 seconds to make some of these decisions. Head on over to oneweekseason.com, get signed up for the Best Ball Plus package. Right now, $199. We will be doing a price drop, but that is not going to come for about a month. So if you're worried about budget, you want to wait, we will be doing a price drop in about a month, I believe to $179. But head on over there, oneweekseason.com, get signed up for Best Ball Plus. You'll get 5 training sessions a week in addition to all that other good stuff. He is Mike. I am Hilow. Hit us up on Discord. Hit us up on Twitter. We'll get those questions answered. And we'll see you on the next Industry Experts. See ya.
See ya.